The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows through the dense canopy of the Appalachian Mountains. Jackson, Ben, Kyle, Derek, and Sam trudged along a narrow, overgrown trail, the excitement of their adventure palpable. They had heard tales of an old mining town, long abandoned and forgotten by time, hidden deep within the forest. It was the perfect challenge for their thrill-seeking spirits. As the group ventured further from the well-traveled paths, the air grew thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The occasional call of a distant bird was the only sound that broke the eerie silence. Jackson, ever the leader, pushed forward with confidence, but the others couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Hey, check this out!" Ben called, pointing to a tree marked with strange symbols. They were crude, almost primitive, etched deeply into the bark. The group exchanged uneasy glances but pressed on, curiosity getting the better of them. By late afternoon, they stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin, its roof caved in and walls covered in moss and ivy. "This must have been part of the old town," Derek said, his voice barely a whisper. Inside, the cabin was a time capsule of another era. Dust-covered furniture, old photographs, and personal belongings lay scattered about. Sam picked up a faded photograph of a family. 2 parents and a child, their faces blurred with time. "This place gives me the creeps," Kyle muttered, dropping the photo back onto the dusty table. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the group decided to set up camp nearby. The air grew colder. They built a fire, its flickering light casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. "Did anyone else hear that?" Ben asked suddenly, his eyes wide with fear. A distant scream echoed through the trees, chilling them to the bone. It was a sound unlike anything they'd ever heard, raw, primal, and filled with agony. "Maybe it was just an animal," Jackson said, trying to calm the others, though his own voice trembled. They sat in uneasy silence, the crackling of the fire doing little to dispel the growing sense of dread. One by one, they drifted off to sleep, but the sense of being watched persisted. Jackson jolted awake in the middle of the night, his heart pounding. The fire had burned down to embers, casting a dim glow. He glanced around and noticed that Sam was missing from his sleeping bag. "Guys, wake up!" he hissed, shaking the others awake. "Sam's gone." Panic set in as they scrambled to their feet, frantically searching the area. They found signs of a struggle, broken branches, disturbed earth, and a trail of blood leading into the dense forest. "We have to find him," Derek said, his voice filled with determination. They grabbed their flashlights and weapons, a couple of hunting knives and a hatchet, and followed the blood trail. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees twisting into grotesque shapes in the darkness. Strange noises echoed through the woods, whispers and growls that made their skin crawl. The trail led them to a small clearing, where they found Sam, or what was left of him. His body was torn apart, limbs scattered, and his face twisted in a final expression of terror. Blood soaked the ground, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of it. "Oh my God," Kyle whispered, his stomach turning at the sight. Before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows, moving with unnatural speed and agility. It was a man, but twisted and feral, his eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. He let out a guttural growl and lunged at them, teeth bared. Jackson swung the hatchet, striking the feral man in the shoulder. The creature howled in pain but didn't falter, its strength seemingly inhuman. Derek and Ben joined the fight, stabbing with their knives, but the feral man fought with a savage fury. Finally, they managed to overpower him, his lifeless body collapsing to the ground. The forest fell silent once more, but the horror of what they had witnessed remained. "We need to get out of here," Ben said, his voice shaking. "There could be more of them." As they made their way back to the cabin, the realization set in that they were not alone in these mountains. Something ancient and malevolent lurked in the shadows, watching their every move. The night was far from over, and the true horror had only just begun. The cold gray light of dawn filtered through the dense canopy, casting eerie shadows over the blood-soaked clearing. Jackson, Ben, Kyle, and Derek stood over the mutilated remains of their friend, the gravity of their situation pressing down on them like a physical weight. "We need to move," Jackson said, his voice firm but hollow. "We can't stay here." Ben, his face pale and drawn, nodded. "What about Sam? We can't just leave him like this." "We'll come back for him," Jackson lied, knowing full well they might never have the chance. "Right now, we need to get back to civilization and get help." The group gathered their gear, their movements mechanical and devoid of their usual camaraderie. Fear and grief hung thick in the air as they started their trek back to the cabin, each step a struggle against the mounting terror that gnawed at their minds. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees twisting into grotesque shapes, their branches clawing at the sky. Strange noises echoed through the woods, whispers and growls that set their nerves on edge. It felt as if the forest itself was alive, watching them with a malevolent hunger. Back at the cabin, they regrouped, their eyes scanning the surrounding woods for any signs of danger. The small clearing felt suffocating, the shadows deeper and more menacing than before. "What's the plan?" Kyle asked, his voice shaking. "We need to find a way out of here," Jackson replied. "There's got to be a road or a trail that leads back to civilization." As they debated their next move, the sound of footsteps rustling through the underbrush sent a jolt of fear through them. They turned, weapons at the ready, as a figure emerged from the trees. It was another feral man, his body twisted and deformed, eyes glowing with a predatory gleam. He moved with an unnatural speed, lunging at them with a snarl. Derek swung his knife, slashing at the feral man's arm, but the creature barely flinched. Jackson brought the hatchet down on the man's head, the sickening crunch of bone and flesh echoing through the clearing. The feral man collapsed, but the victory was short-lived as more figures emerged from the forest, drawn by the scent of blood and the sounds of battle. "They're coming!" Ben shouted, his voice a mix of fear and determination. The group fought desperately, their weapons flashing in the dim light as they fended off the relentless attackers. The feral people moved with a terrifying grace, their strength and speed far beyond anything the group had encountered before. In the chaos, Derek was tackled to the ground, the feral man's teeth sinking into his shoulder. He screamed in agony, blood spraying as he struggled to free himself. Jackson and Ben managed to pull the creature off, but it was too late. Derek's lifeless eyes stared up at them, his body twitching in its final moments. "Go! We have to go!" Jackson shouted, the urgency in his voice cutting through their horror. They ran, stumbling through the forest, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The feral people pursued them, their guttural growls and rapid footsteps a constant reminder of the danger lurking just behind. As they fled deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon an entrance to a hidden cave system. The opening was narrow and dark, the air inside cold and stale. It offered a slim chance of escape, a place to hide from their relentless pursuers. "Get in, quick!" Jackson urged, pushing Kyle and Ben through the opening before following himself. The cave was a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, the walls covered in the same strange symbols they had seen on the trees. The air was thick with a sense of ancient malice, as if the very stones held memories of suffering and death. They moved cautiously through the darkness, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the cold, damp walls. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, a palpable sense of dread pressing down on them. The sound of approaching footsteps and guttural growls echoed through the tunnels. The feral people had found them. "Keep moving," Jackson ordered, his voice tight with fear. "We need to find a way out." As they navigated the maze of tunnels, the feral people closed in, their presence a constant, suffocating weight. The group fought desperately to stay ahead, their bodies and minds pushed to the brink. They stumbled into a large chamber, the walls covered in crude drawings depicting the miners' descent into savagery. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground was littered with bones and remnants of those who had come before them. The realization hit them like a physical blow. These feral people were once miners, trapped underground, and driven to madness and cannibalism. Their humanity had long since been stripped away, leaving only the primal need to hunt and kill. A sense of hopelessness washed over them as the feral people closed in, their eyes gleaming with malevolent hunger. There was no escape, no way out of this nightmare. In a final, desperate stand, they fought with everything they had, their weapons flashing in the dim light as they battled the relentless attackers. The feral people moved with a terrifying grace, their strength and speed overwhelming. One by one, they fell, their bodies broken and bloodied. Jackson, the last to fall, looked up at the twisted faces of his attackers, a final thought echoing in his mind. We never should have come here. As the darkness closed in, the whispers of the forest seemed to mock them, a chilling reminder that some secrets are best left buried. The mountains would keep their dark history hidden, and the feral people would continue to haunt the shadows, waiting for their next prey.